Hi, and welcome to Backstage at Speaking Your Brand. I'm Diane Diaz, lead speaking coach at Speaking Your Brand. Today, I am super excited to bring you two recent graduates of our Thought Leader Academy who are going to share with you, for the very first time, 10 minutes of the talks that they worked on during the Thought Leader Academy. And they've been working on these talks really hard, and I'm really excited for you all to see them. So these grads are going to be delivering talks that wrap in their professional insights and experiences, and you'll get to hear how they frame their messages so that they can make a big impact with their message. So as you're watching them deliver their talks, pay close attention and look for their frameworks. We'll talk more about that towards the end. Now, after they deliver their talks, we're going to have a short roundtable discussion where they're going to talk about things. I'm going to ask them questions, and they're going to talk about things like what it was like to work on their talk, their time in the Thought Leader Academy, coming up with their framework. So we'll dig into that a little bit. So let me introduce the two women that we have with us today. First, we have Heather Stitcher, and Heather is Director of Nursing at Tanner Health. And we also have with us today Cindy Campbell, who is a commercial real estate attorney. Now, I will first welcome to the stage Cindy Campbell. And let me get your slides up here, Cindy. All right. Take it away, Cindy.
We're in the end. We're at the end.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Everybody don't look. Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Diane. Now that everyone's got a sneak peek of what we're going to talk about, I'll start by Diane's already introduced me, so I'll let you know a little bit about myself. I am, in addition to being an attorney, I'm a board member, I'm a volunteer, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter. I just like many of you, I wear a lot of hats, and a lot of times it can be, very daunting, all the roles that we play. And sometimes we can end up taking a back seat to our own lives and just watching it all go by. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about agency and embracing your power to choose the course of your life. And so to do that, I'm going to share one story of agency in my life, which is when I decided to go back to school to become an attorney. I was 33 years old, and my newborn that you see in that photo was a toddler. And I was at the juncture in my life where I was just reviewing the course of my life. And although I had a pretty good life, 3 wonderful children, dance mom, I had a full-time job that I liked and people that I liked working with, I just felt like there was more. And so I was sitting in my car and I was crying, and a fellow dance mom came up to me and asked me, well, why are you crying? And I started to tell her that I had dreams that were unfulfilled and that I wanted to go back to school, and gave her the whole laundry list of why I couldn't do it. And she listened to me, and then she proceeded to tell me her own story of transformation in her life, where she had 2 small children, and she had gone back to school after being in an abusive relationship, and she had no degree. I was at least starting with a degree. And she left me with just some parting thoughts and just said, what's one thing that you could do today to go in that direction? And from then on, from that time, I decided that I was going to go back to school. And I haven't looked back, and the rest, as they say, is history. And so before we get into how to embrace agency, I want to go ahead and define that for you. And so before we do that, I do want to ask you one question. What would your life look like if you embrace your God-given potential and your agency to direct your life? Because to tell you the truth, and to be honest, I struggle just like a lot of you, and feeling like you can't make a change sometimes, or that, you're stuck in a circumstance that you just can't make any different decisions. But I'm going to show you why those are limiting beliefs, and that you do have the power to choose the course of your life. And you do have the power to make transitions and transformation and change the entire trajectory of your life. And so I will tell you, it's been over 15 years since I made that initial decision. And the results they speak for themselves. And so let's move to agency. Now, agency is commonly defined as the capacity to make decisions for yourself. However, I really like the psychological definition of agency, which is the sense of control that you have over your life and the capacity to choose your thoughts and your behaviors. The reason why I like that is because it draws a distinction between the fact that we already possess agency. And it's in exercising that agency that we make a difference in our life and we transform it. And so, what are the challenges? If we already possess that agency, what is keeping us from actually exercising it? And so, we'll look at what the challenges are of not embracing agency. There are two different things that I've been able to see that keep us from exercising agency. There are external factors and internal factors. The external factors look like life circumstances, there are societal expectations, there are also cultural norms. There are a myriad of reasons why, from the outside, we cannot make a change. And from the internal perspective, there's the fact that we may have feelings of low self-confidence or self-worth, or we have fears and limiting beliefs that we have a hard time letting go of. And so for me, in my case, I had a combination of both. I told you earlier that I had the life circumstances that I was holding on to, and I thought that I could not go back to school while having three children and working full time. And then internally, I was dealing with a lot of fear of what would happen had I made this change. Would I be able to be successful doing that? And it was in letting go of those beliefs that I was able to finally make the decision to go back to school and transform my life. And so the adverse impacts on not embracing agency in your life can lead to unfulfillment, can lead to a lot of stress because you're not living your purpose, and also a lack of purpose. See, we're all put here on this earth to do something, right? And it's our job to figure out what that is. And if we're not living in alignment with our purpose, then I don't think that we completely have rest or peace until we do. And so here is what I've defined as the four pillars of agency and how I come to make these changes in my life. And I used it, I didn't know I was using it when I made the decision to go back to school, but I realized that this has been a common thread in my life since then. And so I've outlined them here for you. First, I get alignment. I have to get in alignment and in awareness with what I truly want versus what those societal expectations are of me. So that be very clear about what my purpose is. And if you ask Cindy, what does that look like? Because I'm the type of person that asks that question all the time. How do you do that? How do you get in alignment? And I do that by using a variety of tools. I listen to podcasts, about things that I'm interested in. I read books, but more importantly, I get grounded. I journal, I go within, I meditate, I pray, I go into nature, anything that helps you to get still and quiet and to really hear what's happening inside of you, helps you to get into alignment and crystal clear about the direction that you should be going. The second part of that pillar is once you get crystal clear, you've got to make the decision. Because a lot of us know what we want to be doing or what we could be doing, but we don't ever decide to actually do it. And so making that decision is also the difference between you knowing about your agency and knowing what you could be doing and actually doing it. And then once you've made the decision, you've got to follow that up with action. You've got to act on that decision because, as you know, we can get stuck in weighing the pros and the cons. And if we get there, we're in analysis paralysis, and then we never actually act. We have a whole plan laid out and we never take action. And the thing is, you want to remember that you're looking for progress and not perfection. It doesn't have to be linear. My journey to go to law school, it was challenging. There were things that didn't work out the way I had planned them, but they worked out all the same. In the end, I did achieve the goal. And although I took some detours getting there, it was achieved. And so that started with the action that I took. And then finally, you must always remember to celebrate that you actually did it. It is so important for us, particularly as women, to stop and really look at all that we've been able to accomplish and achieve for our lives, because that also it brings levity. It also is a form of gratitude so that you can experience more of that. And it also lends itself to provide momentum for your next moves. And so the benefits of embracing agency and actually acting upon it are confidence in your decision making and in your intuition. You start to get clarity on your path and what you want your life to actually look like. And then obviously resilience in the fact that we all know that life happens and things don't go as planned. But if you have confidence in your decision making, you're clear about your direction, that resilience comes in to let you know that you can do it again and you can live a life that's in alignment with your values and your passions. And so for me, Once I made those decisions, I was able to graduate with my bachelor's, graduate from law school, and then get sworn in as an attorney and pass it when I passed the bar. And so not only did I get the benefits of the degrees and the occupation, but I also, for my children, it was wonderful for them to see me embrace that agency. And now, when my children are fairly grown, the newborn that was in the picture was 8 years old in that photo, and now she's 17. Her decision-making skills are impeccable. Like, I love the way they make decisions, but I believe they use these 4 pillars without even knowing it. And so I encourage you all to use these pillars to make your decisions and to live a life that you love. And so in closing, I'm going to leave you with one question. What decision or choice can you make today that will take you on the path or further your path down the life that you are creating, that you love? Because I also want to leave you with the mantra that you have the power to choose your life one choice at a time. Thank you.
Fantastic. Oh, you did so well, Cindy. I love it. First of all, I love the images chosen for this, especially the personal ones. Well done. So tell us, how did it feel to give that talk?
It felt very liberating and exhilarating because I think that I've told a version of my story going back to school like many times, but I've never really considered it as an example of how to make decisions in life. I just never have considered it. It's something that I achieved, but being a part of this program and actually putting that down on paper and really outlining the steps that I took to go back to school and what tangible tools and skills that I gained from making that decision was invaluable. So I'm very happy I did this program.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Well, it comes through, and obviously your children have really keyed in on that as well. So that's a big plus, is that they're learning from your actions that you've taken and the choices you've made. So that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. So now I will ask Heather to come to the stage, and let me put your slides on there, Heather. So Heather, you can take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I just want to share a little bit about my professional journey with you guys from a time where I felt very lost and very disconnected, and what that journey looked like for me and how I reconnected with my why. So how many of you have ever seen these funny cat videos? They're not life-changing, but they're funny. Well, one day I was sitting on the sofa relaxing, and my husband was in his chair behind me, and he said, "Hey, I want you to watch this video." Well, my first thought, after I probably groaned and gave him a couple of eye rolls, was that this better be really good. Well, my husband is a teacher, and he had been to a summer conference, and the speaker that they had shared with them this video that he thought that I might want to see. And it wasn't a cat video, thank goodness. It was actually inspirational. But unfortunately, I was not at a place in my life, in my career, where I was in any kind of mood to see anything inspirational. But I watched the video to appease him, and I went on my way. What I didn't realize until much later on was that the impact that this particular video was going to have on my career. Because you see, I was at a crossroad, and I wasn't 100% sure what to do. I had goals, but all of a sudden those goals had obstacles that I was never expecting. I've been a nurse for a little over 25 years, from the bedside to now administration. It's hard. It's hectic, and work-life balance. I mean, has anybody truly ever been able to really define what that looks like? But when I took a step back, I realized that the real problem was much bigger. I was disconnected, I was drained, and I was uncertain. I found myself really questioning my purpose. And at one point, I was even considering maybe another career path. But here's the thing that I learned. All those obstacles and those challenges, they're there, and they're going to be there. But there's something much bigger that's the real issue. And it definitely was for me. And maybe it is for each of you. Maybe we haven't defined our why. So as we go through this content, I want you to consider your why. Maybe you'll jot down some of the reasons why you chose nursing as a career. Maybe for you, it's those trendy and stylish uniforms that you guys have today that I'm jealous of, because as you can see in this picture here from the late 90s, early 2000s, trendy was not a part of what we had. But all jokes aside, knowing your why not only allows you to stay on course, but it also helps us to guide the decisions that we make during our career. Now, for me, there were 3 key takeaways that brought me out of what I termed as the darkness that I was in. And I like to refer to this as my pathway to why. The W was watching for growth. Growth, as we know, comes in all different shapes and forms. Growth also comes from our struggles. And when you're in the thick of a particular moment, it's very hard to see that because it's hard to be positive. You know, you're vulnerable, and that vulnerability allows it to be much easier to be negative. So a while back, actually, several years ago, I found myself in a situation where I had taken on a role at that time that seemed like the perfect opportunity. I wanted to step out of my comfort zone. I was eager to learn, and I wanted that growth. But the reality quickly set in that what I had envisioned for myself wasn't aligning, with how things were unfolding. I had moments of doubt and frustration, questioning if I had made the right decision. I remember one particular day, it was that morning I went into the office, I shut the door, I leaned against the door, and I just stood there crying my eyes out for what seemed like, forever, because I was miserable in the moment. But as time passed and I was able to take myself out of that moment, out of that, what felt like such darkness, I started to reflect on my journey. And what I realized was that growth doesn't always happen in the way that we imagine. Sometimes it's the struggles and the discomfort that we may be in that we learn the most from. I also became more aware of what I truly valued in my career. In the end, even though the struggles were hard, it was an essential chapter for me in my professional story. So I want you to take a moment to think of a challenge that maybe you faced and how did it help you to grow. And then the H is heeding the lesson. The biggest takeaway from me was that the most important lessons lie in the growth that we foster. The decisions that we make, although maybe they're not the best at that time, they're meant to teach us something. Because in the end, it's what we've learned and how we use it that truly shapes our journey. And then this brings me to my final point, the why, which is the most important for me. And the why is you are allowed to be content, even when everyone else around you is telling you to reach for the sky. It's okay to find contentment right where you are. It is fine to not want bigger. For me, my contentment, or let me put it this way, my goal is contentment, because more isn't always better. And for me, more in that situation wasn't better. So sometimes this little girl, this little picture, she's cute, but sometimes more is just more. And I think we've all sort of been here before where, and I'll use an example of makeup. We get all the latest trendy makeup, and we're applying makeup, and we apply more blush. We think we need more, or we apply more eyeshadow because we think we need more. And before we know it, we end up looking like this. And that's a prime example of how more is not always better. So I want you to imagine if you allowed your why to guide you. Every decision, every action, every challenge, creating a life that was filled with intention, passion, and fulfillment. think about those lessons that you've learned from maybe some of your past decisions, whether they're good or they're bad. And have you allowed other people's expectations influence your career choices? So I want to bring you back to the video that my husband had me watch. And unfortunately, I can't share very much, or I can't share this video with you. But turns out it was not a cat video. A couple of months had gone by, and during that time, it was a time where I was struggling. I was in that darkness, and several months had gone by, and that video popped in my mind. So I got on YouTube and I found the video and I watched it. And it was in that moment that I realized that I had lost sight of my why. Rediscovering my why has been a transformative journey, one that, I feel like I have given better clarification to my purpose. I feel like I know what my passion is. That's my profession. And so I feel like I'm more committed to the work that I actually do. And in this video, just to give you a little brief explanation of what's going on, the title of it, if you have time to look it up, is Know Your Why by comedian Michael Jr. And the gentleman right here, Michael Jr., asked him what his career was, and he was a music director. And so he asked him to sing a verse of Amazing Grace, and so he did. And then when he finished that, he said, okay, now I want you to sing that same verse with purpose, with passion. And so he did. The first time that he sang that verse of Amazing Grace, it was about the what. The second time he sang that verse, you could identify the why behind what he was doing. So now I want to challenge each of you to define your why. Don't just allow your why to guide you, but allow it to inspire you to pursue what truly matters the most to you.
Wonderful, Heather. Great job. You did so good.
Ooh, thank you.
Well done. Let's see if I can get this back to, let's see here. Oops, let me see here. Remove that. There we go. Okay. Well, wonderful job, both of you. And I know, so let me ask you, Heather, how did that feel?
It felt really great to share my story, because that is that's something that I've never shared with anyone before.
Oh, yeah.
It's always, well, my husband, of course,
yeah.
and maybe a close, coworker, but the depths of that, the thick of that story, it's one I've never shared. It's always been in the back of my mind, but, I've never shared the situation. I've never shared, the place I was in at that particular time.
Well, thank you for sharing it. And thank you to both of you, first of all, for being vulnerable, because as we know, for those of you watching, public speaking is hard, but also sharing personal stories is even harder, right? Because we're vulnerable. So thank you both for being vulnerable enough to share those stories. Let's talk a little bit about the process that we went through and that you all went through as you're working on these talks. I'm curious what was your, and I'll direct this to you, Cindy, first. What was your expectation coming into Thought Leader Academy as far as, this idea of creating this talk and what it was going to be like? What were you thinking? What was the expectation?
Well, I knew that Thought Leader Academy would help me to put some structure to my talks, because I'm used to giving presentations just for work. But I know that giving personal talks and stories like this, especially if you're trying to impact a crowd, is very different. And I was going to experience giving a wellness talk at a conference, which is very different from speaking about real estate, right? If we're talking about things that are personal. And so for me, coming in and really learning this process has been an amazing experience. I think that has given me a framework and just guidelines for how to really, because we're telling stories, right? And stories you can go on and on. And we want to the important aspects of that story that will impact your audience. And so getting it down to the nuts and bolts and really honing in on what that core message is what I've gotten from this program. So I thank you.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Well, and so you mentioned framework. So I just want to key into that, and I'll come to you just in a moment, Heather. But because you mentioned framework, so both of your talks had a framework. And so Cindy, these 4 pillars, can you talk to us? Of course, I was there, so I know where this came from, but share with us sort of what that process was like of conceptualizing that framework and how we arrived at that.
Well, the way we arrived at it was through doing an outline. Once you have the outline and then you start to flesh out the outline, it's natural for you to move into, well, how do you get here? How does this happen? What do you do? How do you walk your audience through the process of embracing this particular concept that you're sharing with them? And so that's how the 4 pillars was born.
Mm-hmm. And through a lot of talking during the VIP day. Yes, I remember.
3 hours of Cindy just going on and on and on. So many stories.
Yes. Well, I mean, you make a good point, because in the Thought Leader, or in the VIP day that we do as part of the Thought Leader Academy, almost every single woman that I work with in a VIP day says these words or some form of these words. I think I'm talking too much. But in fact, that's not possible, because it's in the talking and then you all in the VIP day sharing all these ideas that some framework sort of bubbles up. Yes. And so for you, Heather, that's kind of what happened. So can you share sort of what we went through and what we talked about, and how that came to be?
Absolutely. So the VIP day was absolutely wonderful, because I knew in my mind what I wanted to talk about. I knew it was related to my why, but how to bring that to light, to be able to share my story the way that I did, it was, I didn't imagine it all happening then. And I did do a lot of talking. I felt like I was doing way more talking than what I should have been. But the VIP day was exceptional for me. It was wonderful.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that, because, and I know that it does feel on your end as the woman in the VIP day, I know it feels like, oh, I'm just going on and on and on. But in fact, that is how we arrive at this, because as you were talking, I'm looking for those different threads, and you had sort of told different stories, and you shared with me that story about that video. And so just for everybody watching, please do go look up that video, because in that, I think when he asked the gentleman to sing the song the next time, he gives him a scenario. You've just gotten out of jail. This has happened. This has happened. This has happened. Now sing the song. And he sang it with gusto. I mean, with feeling and emotion. And then the comedian says the first time he sang it, he knew what he was singing. The second time he sang it, he knew why he was singing it. So that point being that you're tapping into your why. And so in Heather sharing her story with me during the VIP day, this is what bubbled up, was the why. And so naturally the word why became the framework, because of course, right, it has to. That is naturally what came from that. And so then, if I remember correctly, during that time that we were talking about, that we sort of took the WHY and kind of backed in kind of the 3 lessons that you had during this sort of this crossroads that you were at and what you experienced during that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about, how did it feel? These are very personal stories. So how does it feel sharing? And I'll start with you, Heather. How does it feel sharing this new framework and this message publicly, we'll say, in this platform like this, which is, on LinkedIn Live and people can watch it. So how does that feel?
To be honest, I was a little hesitant at first. But then after working with you, I was able to realize that I could share my story without having to be very vulnerable, or tell details, let me say, that maybe I wasn't 100% comfortable sharing, but telling my story, I mean, it feels like there's a little bit of weight lifted off my shoulders.
Oh, yes.
You know, because this is something that's always been on my mind, and it's something that I have wanted to share. I just didn't know how to go about sharing it.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that, because I know that I believe your plans are to share this more internally.
Yes, ma'am.
With some of the your colleagues and things, and so to kind of to inspire them to make sure they're in touch with their why. And so, yeah, it can feel very vulnerable, but like you said, there are the right details to share, and that doesn't have to be all the details, right? So
Right.
you can
That's
share
right.
it in a way that's comfortable for you, but that also will still inspire the people hearing your message. So
Exactly.
thank you
Yeah.
for doing that. And Cindy, how about you? How did it feel to get a little vulnerable and share this in a public forum like this?
Oh my, if it's liberating, actually.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a way to actually embrace who I am and what I've been through, and to be able to give those nuggets to others so that they can see that they can also embrace their agency and how to do that, particularly when you feel stuck. As I know a lot of women in particular I like to talk to, because we always feel like for some reason we can't do something. And a lot of times, oftentimes, it's really self-imposed limitations. And so I'm happy to be transparent and share my story in hopes that it can help others to move quickly down their path.
Yes, thank you for that. Well, I know that kind of relates, Heather, to you sharing that idea of it's okay to be content. We don't have
Right.
to want more.
Yeah.
We
That's
can
correct.
want just what we have, and that is okay. So it's like you're sharing your framework and your pathway to why, but you're also giving your audience permission to maybe just be content if that's what they want. Yeah. Yeah. So that's good. So then let's just talk briefly about the Thought Leader Academy. So you all are about to graduate. So as you're watching this right now, you'll be graduating tomorrow from the Thought Leader Academy. And tell me a little bit about maybe one or two takeaways that you've had from your time in the Thought Leader Academy that you feel what it has done for you. So I'll start with you, Heather.
Okay. For me, it's given me that, like, I do a few presentations here or there, you know, within the system, but to share something along this line, just having the resource to know how to share it, you know, that's huge, because, you know, like I mentioned before, this is something I've never shared, but something I've wanted to share with my team. I just didn't know how to share it for it to make the most impact. So that was a great learning, you know, experience for me as to how to get it in that outline.
Yes.
You know, how to create it to where it will be meaningful.
Yes.
So that was, you know, a huge takeaway.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad to hear that. And you, Cindy?
I'm going to say Heather took my answer, because for me, yes, I've been used to putting together presentations for work, which are very,
yes,
they're one way, right? You're talking about what it is that you do all day long. But when we're talking about, especially something that can really impact lots of people's personal lives and professional lives, that the takeaway for me was actually how to thoughtfully share those nuggets with people.
Yeah.
And so that's what I came to Thought Leader Academy to learn, is how to structure those talks, how to perhaps get the better speaking engagements and things of that nature, to move toward those passions and the life lessons that I've learned, and to be able to translate that to a crowd. And so
yes.
I'm so grateful for it.
Oh, good. Well, and so then let me ask you then, Cindy, what is next for you as a speaker and thought leader?
Exactly what I just said.
Yes. More of this, more speaking.
More of this. Honestly, I find myself, even in small circles or groups, I always tend to venture to start to talk in that nature, talk in an inspirational manner. And the fact that I went back to school later on in life, I've learned so many things throughout the course of my life. And in teaching as an adjunct, I actually realized that I love to share that knowledge with young people in their early career, especially people who don't know what they want to do, and then women who seem to be stuck in where they are at this time, you know, and don't know how or can they actually make a change and be happy with that change. And so for me, those are tools that I've embraced along the way. So this has given me a platform to be able to share that. And so I'd like more of that.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And we will look for you out there. And what about you, Heather? What is next for you as a speaker and thought leader?
So for me, it's just really, I don't have those aspirations.
That's okay.
I just want to be able to share things like this with my team, because I see a lot of times, or at least I think what I see is so many nurses just going through the day to day. And then knowing what I've been through, I often wonder, have they lost their why?
Mm-hmm.
You know, have they lost their passion? And maybe they just need to look at redefining their why, and maybe
Yes.
just writing it down and realizing what that why is. So my audience is more just, within my own, on my own team.
Yes, and that's great. And we did talk about that during your VIP day,
Mhm.
the fact that you had mentioned, I'm not trying to take this on the road. And my I think comment back, and I said this to many a woman, is that you don't have to want to be on a big stage somewhere or take the show on the road or do a TED
Right.
Talk to be considered a speaker. But you can be considered a speaker just within your own internal circle of influence. And that is important, just as important as any other type of speaking, because the impact you can have is enormous. So
Right.
just by sharing your message and having this talk that you can then use to inspire your team matters, right? So
Right.
thank you both for being vulnerable, for being open, for being so supportive during the Thought Leader Academy. I know the other women were impacted by you all and vice versa. So thank you both for that.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. All right. Well, for everybody watching, please do connect with Heather and Cindy on LinkedIn, and then you can follow whatever they're doing there and check out when Cindy takes this show on the road. You can find out where she's going to be speaking and go see her. And if you would like to join us and work on your talk and find your framework and build your thought leadership message, you can do that in the Thought Leader Academy. You can visit us at speakingyourbrand.com/academy. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/academy. And until next time, thanks for listening.